Hello, everyone, and welcome to Tweet the Leader in You podcast, where we chat about realistic leadership theories. I'm your anniversary host, Rex Charlton, and today we're going to be talking about the tweet. So, I'm going to be interviewing the one and only host of the show, Templeton Sawyer. So, welcome, Templeton.
Hey, what's going on, Rex? How are you?
Good. How you doing? How you doing? It's such amazing to actually be on this podcast. I've been watching you for such a long time, and actually being here is honestly amazing. So, how you doing?
I'm good. It's just a pleasure to have you on the podcast, Rex. Just to be the anniversary host. Because we have lots to talk about when it comes down to our 1 year. Because
Mm,
we've done so much in this impact of our 1 year anniversary for Tweet the Leader New, and I can't wait to get into the conversation.
for sure, for sure. So we're just gonna get dive right into the questions. I have a few questions written up, and I'm super excited to know where the first question is where did this all start from? Where did this tweet deleting you podcast came from? Like, did it came from overnight? Like, tell me more. Tell your audience more about where did this came from.
So, Rex, it comes all with having faith, but also thinking about, oh, you always wanted to start a podcast. I always wanted to start a podcast. I always wanted to inspire on a platform that will inspire people. And I always say, yes, I want to inspire thousands of people, but I think about if one person gets a message from this podcast, I'm happy. I'm really
Mm,
excited. And so the vision from the podcast started actually last year, August, when I was actually on other podcasts with my Black Hole podcast. Shout out to Israel, who saw the great fit to actually give me the opportunity to create this podcast platform. And so I never forgot that day last year, August, when I got to interview and we had a discussion afterwards. And yeah, the podcast started in October 24th, and I can't believe how far we've come
right.
when it comes down to that. And I look forward to the vision of where it comes from. And I have to answer the question of how did it all started with the words of Tweet. So I
Mm,
looked on the transformation part of Tweet Leader in New podcast because the acronym is transform with enthusiastic, excellent talent. And so looking at that transformation from what social media has brought and bringing that enthusiasm, that excellent people, that talented individuals onto the podcast because I wanted keywords of who
mm,
we are as a podcast and looking for those individuals to tell the story and to share tips and lessons.
for sure. I honestly didn't know that the tweet had a meaning. I was today years old.
Oh
They
yeah.
say that the tweet had a meaning. So I didn't know that. So thank you so much for sharing. So I know you speak. I just want to talk on the topic about you said it at least one person. If it touched one person. So I personally must say that you inspire me, my brother. You inspire me, and you inspire so many others just to do what is right. It inspired me. We go way back. We go way
Yeah,
back
boy.
from high school. From high school. So again,
Big
you
up
just
242.
okay, 242 in the building. So again, to actually be on this podcast with you, and you're hosting this podcast, and it's honestly like a dream. It's like a dream. So thank you so much. Again, I'm gonna get in some more questions, but again, I just would like to say thank you so much for having me on this podcast and to actually share each of us leadership abilities. So thank you so much.
No problem, man. You're
Awesome. So
awesome.
I have a few more questions. Um, you already talked about how the vision started, but you said where did the name came from? Speak. I want you to speak on the reflection on that, like where I know you talk about the tweet, the meaning of the tweet, but I want you to speak on that. Like, where did, like, I know tweet came from, but like, was it a passion overnight, or was it like a dream that you always wanted in the past?
So I would say when it comes down to tweet, it was a passion. It was a
Mm,
passion that came not overnight, but it came in the making of creating the vision of Tweet the Leader in You. I actually shared on my Black Hole podcast that I'm currently writing a book on Tweet the Leader in You. So it came from a book actually that I'm writing, which
nice.
has not been published yet, but it's going to be at some point. Um, and all that good stuff. And so that's where the vision actually came from for the name of the podcast, from the book that I'm currently writing
Right.
about inspiring leaders for different change and all that good stuff. And reflecting on this 1 year anniversary, Rex, there has been some times where, I mean, I remember when we started our first podcast episode, and I was like, having to start at least 3 to 4 times, and I was like, ugh. I say, is this really for me? But then my producer Israel, he said to me, say, you know what? If this happens, like you have to continue to blend into the intro, and you have to continue to go. And then he inspired me to just continue to practice, and then it came as a natural thing. And he said it would not happen in one episode. Once you get into the other episodes, you're going to continue to blend and continue to move forward and all that good stuff. And that's one of the things that has carried me through this 1 year. That we are going to be sharing so much things that we're doing. We're innovating in this podcast. We're bringing new people onto the team, which we'll be sharing in the future episodes that's to come. And also we'll be sharing where we're going moving forward. There's a lot of persons who have made this platform who it is. And like I said, my producer is one of them. He has actually started he's helped me with the vision in order for us to get where we are today, and also to start with bringing other persons onto the team, from a creative perspective, from an artistic perspective, from a
Right.
leadership perspective, from a PR perspective. There's a lot of people who will be joining. I'm so excited to share in the next few episodes of what is to come on this podcast. And so we've actually won 30 under 30 innovators for Atlantic Business
Wow.
Magazine this year. So I'm pretty excited that November 2nd, I'll
Okay.
be at the Discovery Center receiving that award
Yeah.
for Atlantic Business Magazine on behalf of Tweet the Leader in You. Because Tweet the Leader in You is an innovation. It's actually
Mm.
innovation itself, because it's a platform that's encouraging and welcoming persons who never had that space to share their story. And for me, a lot of people ask me, how do I look for speakers for Tweet the Leader in You? I
Right.
look for speakers when it comes down to hunting people's social media pages. And so you see me hunting your social media page. That means I see that there's a vision. I see that
Yeah.
there's something that needs to be birthed out, and
Yeah.
there needs to be something that needs to be said on your behalf, and you need to speak. Your
Yeah.
voice is important. And I
For sure.
believe that every person's voice is important, from the artistic, from the music, from the governance, from the political arena, from the religious beliefs, and everyone in general. It's an inclusive podcast, indeed.
For sure. Wow. Like, oh man, you just inspired me right now, and we're not even we're talking. And you just inspired me more. So I know in 1 year you achieved so much for this podcast. Like,
Yeah.
you ever thought that this podcast would have take off the way it did?
Actually, no, but in a way, yes.
Okay.
Because of hard work and dedication. My producer, I'm echoing his words,
I
and I
know.
remember he told me when we had a conversation, he said, "Listen, if you're doing this, you have to go all in. You have to stay committed to it. You have to actually continue to keep things updated." And that's one of the things, because I know I'm a person. I have a lot of things on my agenda, and so when we
Mhm.
had that conversation in August of last year about making sure I'm committed. I said, yes, I'm committed. I said, oh, Tyler, I hope you committed. And so,
Yeah.
like, that was one of the fears of me actually thinking if I was going to be committed to the whole length of the podcast, or was I going to give up. But I must say that this is my baby. This is really my baby. And I think that this has brought me to life, to actually have a voice and to allow other voices to be on the platform.
Amazing. Thank you so much, man. You are a true. I keep on telling this, repeating this over and over again. But you are so inspiring for so many people, and just this podcast even bringing out even more. Right? You're bringing out your personality. You're bringing out your style even more.
Mm.
So that's thank you so much for having me again. But I just want to touch on a few more points here you made in your conversation there when you talk about the magazine. Let's not skip over that. Let's not breeze over that. You said you're gonna be receiving an award for this podcast. So let's talk about that and how that achievement alone is just mind blowing. So let's talk about the achievement about this podcast. So tell me about how did you get recognized for this?
So I would say I thank one of the team members who are on the team, Shelly. She actually nominated myself with the podcast for this because she believed in the vision. She saw the vision for this podcast. And as I reflect on receiving this award, you know what it is to get 30 under 30 innovators
Right.
actually in the Atlantic part. Four
Mm.
provinces representing four provinces. That's amazing to reflect
Hmm.
on.
Absolutely.
And that says that we have a lot that we can do. And Tweet the Leader in You has also been aired on Global Halifax News this summer as well,
I
sharing
saw.
the importance of a youth perspective as well. And also, we've been on different other medias and platform. And so I always say that we're still in our baby phase. But we're growing, and I want to take things slow because I want to enjoy those small moments of the podcast. And when those big moments come, I'm going to remember those small moments that got us there, that got us where we need to be in order to move the podcast forward. And it always started with humble beginnings. I
Right.
always say that humble beginnings made us who we are today. And we are, I say this we because it's a we collective.
Yeah.
We wouldn't have been a podcast without a producer, editor, Sheldon. I thank him for also helping with the editing of the podcast throughout this year as well. I thank the creative director, Ashley, who's just recently joined us this summer as well. And thanking other persons like Shelly, who's actually been a part and Luke, they've been a part. They've stepped away for a little bit, but they've been a part of this podcast, and we're welcoming new faces soon to the podcast as well. To continue the legacy of where, and I always try to say, people who join the team of Tweet the Leader in You, they're growing. They're learning new skills, and for me, I'm coaching them and taking them out of their comfort zone. So if you're joining Tweet the Leader in You, or if you love to be a part of the Tweet the Leader in You environment and the movement that we're doing, know that you will come out and move and to do development. So yeah,
Awesome, man. Awesome, awesome, awesome. So I
yeah,
I,
man.
I want to wrap up with I may not wrap up with this because I'm a person who thinks a lot. But last year was a pandemic. We all
Yeah,
know we're still in a pandemic, right? And
right, right.
things has changed so much. I know you were in studio. You had a studio going on, and then you had to change to virtual. Tell me how that was from Tweet the Leader and You podcast. I know. Tell us more about that and how it was
I
for
would
you.
say I would say thank you to my producer. I have to like I listen. I have to Israel. I mean, I'm bigging you up a lot because it really is him because he's like the person who mentored me, and he was my lead go to for if
Mhm.
I had to have some com, conversations about the podcast. He was the
Right.
first person to know because I want to have that confirmation and all that good stuff. And so when we switch to virtual, it was a smooth transition.
Right.
Of course, we had to uh, um, see some different technical difficulties with stuff, but at the end of the day, we got through it. We figured things out and all that good stuff. But no, I think we went through a smooth transition from studio to actually online. And we'll do some studio. We're looking at different ways of actually taking Tweet the Leader You to a global level. We are an Atlantic podcast, but we'll be having global conversations, and so we believe that this virtual platform will still be of use when we do use some studio time as well, but we'll be using some virtual aspects as well.
Amazing, man. Amazing. So I'm gonna wrap up with this last question. I'm so
Yeah.
sorry for asking all
No,
these
no, no, no. Go ahead. I love it. I love it.
questions. But one last question: where do you see your podcast in the next five? I would say not say 5. Let's say 2 to 5 years.
So, um, the big reveal that I see this podcast becoming a brand. Tweet the Leader in You as the brand, and and the podcast being one of the components of that brand, and adding other components that will be able to help other people grow. And my team and I, we had a retreat, strategic planning retreat in August, where we strategize many of amazing things that we want to do with the podcast in the next few coming years. But I won't share too much. But I would say that we're taking Tweet the Leader in You as a brand, and having having the podcast as one of the key components. And so I'm pretty excited about that and where we're going to go in the future for sure.
Amazing, amazing, amazing.
Yeah,
Thank you
yeah,
so
man.
Thank you so much, man. I know we have to go, but thank you so much for having me. I know I'll be on a few more episodes. This won't be the last episode, I promise.
No,
But
no.
I definitely will be on some more episodes where we talk. I think we have some episodes coming up. But again, thank you so much. I know it's honestly a pleasure talking to you every time. Every time. I know we don't talk every day, but when we do, it feels like we never had a disconnection. So again, thank you
No.
so much for having me on the podcast. Thank you for being. I hope I was an amazing anniversary host. So
Oh
again.
yeah.
Thank you for having me. I know you end with quotes for the Tweet Deleting You podcast. So I have a quote here.
Oh,
So again,
okay. Okay.
leadership is an action, not a position. And this is by Donald McLean. Okay, so again, the quote is leadership is not an action. Leadership is not an action. And it's an action, not a position. So again, thank you so much, Templeton, for having me on the podcast. It's honestly a pleasure.